So I misjudged the battery and the shutdown process. So this is the second take. And I started off the first one. But it's been some time, so I got a nice solid buzz going. But this won't be as dramatic, I feel, as the first one, which I thought was pretty good and got cut off at 25 minutes or beyond when I was drawing my conclusion. So, not to get too re-distracted, I would just say the value of the videos of that type, which this is why I say I am personally significant above all other poets ever, is exactly for this reason. Even my mistakes, my intimate private moments, other than when I'm talking to myself, are recorded for me. While it is a horrifically massive intrusion, and I don't know how complex do you just gotta say it's just wrong. Um, so let me see. The gist of this is this is a poem I wrote today. It's based on inspiration, drawing from external sources. So, for the most part, people associate the power to create with some kind of good or genuineness. Um, and supposedly the power to destroy with some kind of, likewise, good or genuineness. And then somewhere outside of those two is bad. But, so drawing from my environment and inspiration from the people around me, while engaged in conversation with coworkers, two women, and the last video got probably into a very good tangent about the significance of this, but I'm just gonna skip past it. But it was two women, and I do adamantly adhere to and try to implement in my life, and that's what makes this venue so significant, is that the in-depth analysis that is retrievable through Prism actually gives insight into the actual moment that I'm referencing based on my own memory and recollection. So that's the really crazy shit about Prism. Is there's the access to Prism is an access into my interpretation of recollection, recalling information, and actually the course in which I come to conclusions. That the whole of the sum is its own value. It's it's the path that can't be followed. Not in that, obviously, not in that it's beyond achievement. It's the path that can't be followed merely because you have to make it. So, to prove my powers and how they unfold, which is all just me reinforcing my delusion. People, let's keep this shit in context. Some of the aftermath is, some of the difficulties I'll say that I'm having right now is apparently I'm emitting, and I guess it's not wrong, it's sensible, a lot of sexual tension because the energy radiating back is pretty intricate, a little awkward, not unappreciated at all, but uh, let's see. We're say I would be lying if I said that it wasn't a motivational factor in this kind of additional, no pun intended. Oh shit, sorry about that. Freudian slip. So, the poem for today, based off of this, is what I mean that I don't know the irony of my whole maternal, feminine emphasis, but no reconciliation with what are considered virtually or statistically, characteristically chauvinistic sexual domination type um, fantasies, I guess. I don't know. I guess I do have to point out that, or I don't have to, but maybe I'm telling myself I have to. No great presenter or person that I've studied in any vague sense has ever attempted to turn the mirror on oneself. So that's supposed to be virtually impossible. Like the height being Carl Jung, who essentially brought the Freudian school to the level of kindergarten. Which is one of the ways that I interpret the Freudian concepts and identity and construct as an element of fascism. And it is to keep at such a low level, even beyond below that, because the notion of kindergarten implies some type of educational endeavor, positive or negative. But the counterforce is even obstruction of that initial. To go through through the deeds, the acts, go through the school. Not to say elementary is a requirement, but a tribal society, it's a stage. There's a structuring so that you feel like you're going through the stage, you're going through the motions. Oh damn, that's a badass breakthrough right there. So you're really going through the motions of what would normally be a fundamental identity stage as a human being. But as you're just going through the motions, you're not actually reconciling that phase of your life. So if you don't do that, this is where the book The Mass Psychology of Fascism comes in, written by Wilhelm Reich, interestingly enough, who, the third edition, I believe it was 1954, could have been 59, that was published in the United States. And this guy that was kicked out of Nazi Germany for this book, and after the war was compelled by Americans who really believed the narration. It's crazy to understand that there's the ability to have a narration matters on a human level. It's where we get our shit. That's what I'm kind of targeting. So in this narrative, well, then yeah, it gets kind of tricky. Well, I think people tend to believe who they are determines how they interpret the world. Okay, people tend to believe who they are determines how they interpret the world. When the reality is that might be an element of it, not to be completely dogmatic. But for the most part, it's primarily where you are influences who you determine yourself to be. That is almost a weapon of, maybe not even almost, weapon of mass destruction. That is the Celtic Australian independently bowing to the Queen of England. That's deep shit. That's a very fundamentally deep power for an entity that in and of itself identifies as a corporation, a literal LLC, going back to like, I think 15 something, because the Holy See, which is the Catholic version, goes back to 1505, I know for sure. At least that's how long the Swiss Guard has been protecting it. But so on the one sense, a human that gets born through the portal into a segment, so to speak, of a modern society, they are prone and statistically seen over massive amounts of generational data to be maliciously aligned with essentially people that are along there. The term class is very confrontational because of the communistic appearance or alleged like derivation, something like that. But if you really want to make sense of it, I guess the truth comes back to without beating around the bush, because you have to look at it. If you really want to understand it, you have to look at the Native American situation, so-called, or the Indian Bureau, whatever. I believe that's actually what Indian Affairs Bureau. I don't know. There's a lot of very. See, you can control a conversation in more ways than just arguing a point. So, if the sustainment of like the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Indians and the Atlanta Braves and the Florida Seminoles and so forth and whatever else is motherfucking out there. Those are a type of personification of a sentiment, and a sentiment as so interpreted by Carl Jung is the origin of brutality. So this gives a very, compared to what's commonly known, based on what appears to be instinct, because of the prevalence of it around you, you tend to not grasp isn't the right word, because grasp would imply that at some point it might have passed before you. But if it passed before you and it had no relevance, it wouldn't matter even if you were told about it later on. That doesn't mean that your brain is forced to recall. So part of the defense mechanism of the whole system is that per the mass psychology of fascism, which ended up being the only book in American history to be officially burned by the United States government, and William Reich ended up dying in prison in the United States over, I think, at the age of 72, after being in jail for a few years, for actually making progress in awakening this human identity and some crazy fucking shit. I guess most people would associate Martin Luther King, characters like Martin Luther King or JFK or Robert Kennedy, as Cesar Chavez. To be fair, I don't know if that matters. Or Molly. I don't know her name. There's an Irish lady. Who disarmed the NRA. But this guy, William Reich, didn't invent as much as rediscover. A technology that was used in an eon's worth of human collaboration and cooperation. And somehow that all the metal working of today is just the remnants of the amalgamation of materials that William Reich, in essence, rediscovered a value for and a means of reconstructing in modern terms, like a modern interpretation. Amulets and so forth. Which makes, again, hypocritical doesn't matter because I haven't done this. But the orgone stuff really does matter. People thought it was a gimmick because of his emphasis of the method of child torture, which equates to child sexual assault, but it's so intricately, just precision embedded inside a person's psychology that their so-called quote-unquote parental instincts do not fundamentally have the capacity to override that. That's the primary intent or knowledge behind the initial act in and of itself. It's a type of disarming or subduing. In one sense, traditionally, the concept of seeing through it has been associated with a moral character um, I guess in one sense the interpretation is based on, as opposed to a higher intellectual um, excel, achievement, or something like that. It's in the youthful, childish, imaginative extent, which is not necessarily the opposite, but it is definitely not a concurrent frequency, so to speak. So the defense mechanism that's triggered induces one to be more subject, but not necessarily subject isn't the right way to look at it, because that ego that's likewise being created as a coping mechanism in this process, as in I can take it, I can take it, I can make it, I can make it. I'm so sorry that it's this real. I can make it, I can make it, I can take it, I can take it, I can make it. That ego, the bigger the ego, behind it is this internal chaotic combustion state of just a piston. That's the horsepower. That's why we're recreating it. That's our concept of power. Not even necessary. As at least the Tesla proved in one sense, but other means have proven to. But who said it? The ghetto. I got no place else to go. But I guess we reflect what we live. And as such, here goes the challenge. I draw from the environment. So two ladies, who in the courses of conversations told me two lines. One said, people don't like to be told they're out of control. I love that shit. Fuck. Whoa. And then the other, she said, well, secrets make us sick. Ain't no sacred scriptures can contain this shit. But YouTube. So, drawing back as well on a 2-day entry, I wrote a poem today. It's called The Flight from the Corrupt. And it's actually still a work in progress. But it's late and I gotta do this. So, second attempt. Tarred to the hips in the muck and the mire, fur and feathers seared and singed, encased within the empire. Buried beneath the stones thrown from family and friends, unless one soars beyond these fiends, the suffering never ends. No one likes being told the truth that penetrates the soul. No great man nor his brood can face their out of control. So thin-skinned politicians win because birds of a feather vote them in. How can one rise under the weight of a nation, race, and creed, the most fantastic architectural endeavor ever built to human need? Who can rend themselves from the clutches of the human child's bane? Who can navigate, escape through the awe-inspiring labyrinth of flame? Who can remove the mountains of rocks off your very own corpse? Who can stand upon the helm and set their very own course? These secrets keep us sick and feeble, the perfect prey of evil, divide us from our very own selves, and compress us into a people that somehow prove humanity is equal. There stands no small task if one seeks more than sanctuary and security. The giant's hydra strikes and devours with the heads of technology, authority, and purity. Why even try when you're born to die and you've never seen anyone else ever fly? Just step in the steps your parents laid, and don't let anyone ever see you try, because even if you do succeed, to them you'll only die.